Hello everyone and welcome to the newest viewer verdict video for the channel, where you get to cast your vote on whether the game being shown off deserves a place in the channel schedule or not. Go watch the first video in the playlist if you want the full breakdown, but essentially it just boils down to watch the video, watch the game, in this case the very first showing of Riot Quest, and then see whether or not you are for or against it returning to the channel regularly. And yeah, just in general, let me know what you think. Riot Quest is a bit of a weird one. It was launched, I think, via Kickstarter in 2019 by Privateer Press, and obviously that was around the time the pandemic hit, so I think that probably did not help its chances. It's still going. I don't know how regularly it's getting new characters, but it never really picked up speed, which is a shame because it has such a wonderful, colourful cast of characters set in an alternative universe. A 90s cartoon version of the Warmachine universe. So it's an apocalyptic situation, but it's done in like colourful characters and silliness and Comic Sans everywhere for some reason. And it has a lot of crossover with Monsterpocalypse, actually, the other Privateer Press big game, because it uses the same dice. The same three types of dice as well. You've got the dice that you spend on your abilities, you've got the dice that power them up, and you've got boost dice. That's it, the third dice. So we will quickly go over how you play Riot Quest. It probably looks more complicated than it is on a board that has all these numbers and hexes and things. It's actually super simple. It's essentially just a MOBA where two teams of any selections of heroes really go up against each other, and the goal is get to 7, for lack of a better term, just for easing people in, victory points. It doesn't call them victory points, but 7 victory points and you win. And a round can go quite quickly, so it might end up being a bit of a short video if 7 gets hit real quick, but if people like the game and want to see more of it going forwards, we might do best of 2, best of 3 in a video, just depending. So we'll look at both sides. We'll look at the general overview of the game and a card as well, and just what you need to play, and then we'll get started. So to play Riot Quest, you need a minimum of 5 characters and a maximum of 10, although at any time there will only ever be 4 on the table playing. You kind of want one at least in reserve, because characters will die and come back and die and come back. And what you see here is one of the 2 starter sets available for the game. It comes with these 5 heroes here. The one in blue is Sir Dreyfus. The little pyromaniac explosive loving goblin next to him is called Gubbin. We have Bamfist. Balthazar Bamfist is his full name. Dez is the tall lady with the rocket launcher, and then at the back there with the 2 crossbows is Eris. So that is everyone you get. There is 6 classes in Riot Quest, so this only represents 5 of them. You can just mix and match. You can have as many or as little as you want of each individual class, just playing standard open play. There is a more restrictive mode where you have to bring one of each class only, and I think there's a third mode, but that's not what we're concerning ourselves with today. To keep it as simple as possible, it's just 5 on 5, not worrying too much about which classes are which. They're colour-coded: blue, purple, orange, yellow, green and red. I don't remember offhand what they're all called though, so I'm going to cheat and open up the rulebook and tell you. And that just gives you one particular passive per class. Fighters in red, guards in blue, gunners in orange, green is rogues, yellow is scouts, and purple is specialists. So as I say, each of those classes impart one ability, but then each individual hero within a class will have their own unique stuff as well. And taking on the starter box team is an eclectic mix of other heroes available for the game. They're not from any other starter box. We have Bumbles the Bear, we have Destructotron 3000, we have Weird Wendell, who launches naked goblins at people, we have the Wolf with no name, and we have the Wastelander down here. He's very small, but that takes up the other side. So they've got one of each class as well. Both sides don't have the fighter class, the red type, which are just like full on aggro. Maybe they're more nuanced than the name would imply, and that's why they don't give them in the starter set. I don't know. But either way, that's both sides. So now we'll just look at an example card and talk through how the game is played. This video is sponsored by Noble Knight Games. Check out the video description below for an affiliate link that will take you through to their store, and it will help me out as well. Thanks. So in Riot Quest, much like Monsterpocalypse, you have a dice well, except thankfully there's not as many dice used in Riot Quest. Each turn you get 6 dice to spend on abilities. When you choose to activate a character, you could spend up to 5 of those dice at once, because there's 5 potential actions a character can do, and you can't do more than one of the same action per activation. So for instance, we have Gubbin's card here. Actually, I'll come around this side of the camera so the lighting's a bit better, apologies. Here we go. So this is just what a character card looks like. It says their name, when it comes into focus that is. There we go. It tells you how many hexes they're allowed to move if you choose to do a run action, which would cost you one of those action dice in your dice well. It tells you defense, that's how hard they are to hit. The first number is just the number that needs to be equaled or beaten to do normal damage. The second number is how much needs to be equaled or beaten to do super damage, which is just 1 extra damage, and then how much health they have. So he's pretty easy to take out, he's only got 2 health. Then you have a bunch of passives here. We don't really need to go into the specifics unless it comes up. And then down the bottom here we have attacks. So he's got too many explosives, he can do it up to range 3. You would roll 1 of the white dice because you have to spend at least 1 white dice to do the attack, add in 4 of the blue dice, and some characters have the red dice as well. And the red dice I think only has 1 blank on it from memory from Monsterpocalypse. And also they could have special rules, like for instance too many explosives has the explosion passive. There is characters with more than 1 attack to choose from, like for instance Des here. She's got a close range attack, she can use a dagger to stab someone, but then of course she's got that gigantic bazooka on her shoulder, so she could do that instead. Your class ability is always up here with at least 1 other thing that's specific to the character. She's pretty easy to wound, but not easy to do super damage to, so there's kind of the balance there between how all the characters work. And the point is, when you spend dice, you put them on the cards. If at any point you've got nothing left in your dice pile, you're forced to pass, although you can choose to pass prior to that if you want to. And that's your turn over, or rather your entire round over. And once all players have passed, a new round starts after a bit of a tiny cleanup phase, which we'll cover as we need to. There's one more thing to mention, and that is how to get points and riot gear. Riot gear specifics we don't really need to worry about until they get equipped, but for every hero you bring, so if you bring 5 heroes, 6 heroes, 7 heroes, 8 heroes, you get to bring 1 bit of riot gear. It doesn't need to be tied to the character, but you only get 1 per character you're bringing. So both sides have a selection of 5 riot gear, which cost loot to equip to a character, and they give you benefits. And obviously the more loot it costs, like for instance the projectile scope there, it costs 4 loot, so it's very hard to equip. So we'll only really worry about those. I'm trying to ease in if they actually get equipped via spending enough loot. And that brings us to the various ways you win. So this is the last thing I promise before we get started. Every round, or rather at the start of the game, we will draw 2 bounty cards, read them out. It will set out a mission type of some kind and offer you some victory points for doing it. You can go after those to get to the 7 points you need to win. You can kill the enemy. You get 1 victory point in the form of a scrap card for killing an enemy. When you kill an enemy, they drop loot. And also every round, if there isn't a treasure chest, you'll spawn one. So at the start of the game, you'll spawn one. The very bright yellow markers on this colourful table are potential spawn points of treasure. The other ones, which I actually have the 3D terrain for, are where you can potentially spawn in. You don't get to choose. You choose the order in which your heroes spawn in, but you have to roll a d6. So it might roll a 4, for instance, which is down here. You get to pick whatever an adjacent hex to the teleporter you've rolled, but you don't get to pick the teleporter you appear to unless you have a rule that says you do. So you're not necessarily going to come onto the battlefield at the most opportune moment. If your health hits 0, you give up 1 victory point, you drop a loot where you died, you go into what's called the Kula, which is this thing. You have a chance of coming back at the end of the round by going onto your bench instead. If at any point you don't have 4 characters on the field and your turn rolls around, and you do have one that isn't in the cooler, you can immediately bring them back on, rolling to see where they randomise. So I think that covers it. I hope I explained that relatively clearly. It is honestly pretty simple. The board looks more intimidating than it is just because it's so colourful. Oh, these warning hexes are just cover. If you're in it, you're in cover, so your defense is 1 higher on both counts, and it costs +1 movement to walk in or through. It's just that, and that's the last thing I can think of. With that, let's jump in. We're going to draw the bounty cards, draw the treasure card, and start spawning in some heroes after that. Alright, from the top of the bounty deck, we've drawn the first 2 cards. From the top of the treasure deck, drawn 1. I've also included the quick reference there for actions, just in case you want to follow along. Rigging and raiding are related to bounty and treasure cards, so that's why I didn't really cover those actions. Let's cover the treasure first, just because there's a randomly spawned treasure chest somewhere. If at any point at the top of a player's turn there is no treasure chest, another one spawns. So this is a spiked chest. If you have a gunner, which both sides do, they can raid it without having to spend an action, and if you raid it, well, normally you would just have to do as it says there. If you do it for free or have to pay, you then just roll one of the blue dice, and which are the boost dice, and depending on how many strikes you get, 1 strike is just a bog standard strike, 2 is classed as a super strike, which is some verbiage that might be used on bounty cards, and then you get the listed rewards. So that'll be spawned in randomly. Actually, let's roll a d6 and see where it's coming in. It's coming in at number 4, and the spike chest is this one, and number 4 is off down here, but you'll take my word for it, it's on number 4 down there. Now, more importantly, how do they win? First bounty is called What's in the Box? Setup. Place a mystery box token, I'll have to go check which token that is, on a random treasure beacon, then place a loot token in each unoccupied space adjacent to the mysterious box. A hero must spend an additional action die to raid treasure chests while the mysterious box is in play. A hero adjacent to the mysterious box can rig to open it. If successful, that hero's controlling player gains this bounty and it's worth 2. Also, if you are a rogue or a scout, you can do it for free. Presumably that's why that's listed there. So that'll spawn in at a random treasure chest. Normally that isn't where bounties would go, but that'll be there when we get started. The other bounty is called Frickin' Imposters. The goal is if a hero's attack knocks out an enemy with the same class, that hero's controlling player claims this bounty. The enemy has the same name as well, you get 3 loot tokens. Well, thankfully no, that's not going to be the case, but both sides have the exact same number of each class, so that is very possible for both sides and is worth 1. So a total of 3 points on offer towards the 7 needed to win there, plus 1 for every kill you get, and the reason you want to loot treasure chests and such is to get loot so that you can buy riot cards and just make your character stronger. So with that, I'm going to do a lot of rolling now, see who goes first, and then spawn in some heroes and see where they end up. So both sides have deployed their 4 heroes. Going a little bit of shaky cam here just to show where everybody ended up. I guess we'll refer to the sides as starter box and then mismatches, because there's no real like team coloration or anything like that, and you can mix and match any heroes with anyone else, so that isn't a way to identify either. But it's all random where they spawn in, it's all d6 rolls, so as much as you can plan ahead, sort of, all you're really doing is picking the hero and hoping for the best. So for the starter box, Sir Dreyfus and Gubbin, apologies for the quick movement there, got teleporter number 4. Again, you can pick any unoccupied hex around the teleporter you roll, but it's still random which one you end up at. That does put them very close to a treasure chest that they can only interact with once what's in the box has been removed. Or actually, did it make it impossible or did it make it harder to do? Either way, the rest of the starter box is up here, with Dez and Iris spawning both at teleporter gate number 2. Bamfist is off the table, that's the dwarf with the huge Doomfist type thing. For the other side, Bumbles and Destructitron. Is it Destructitron? He is actually called Destructitron 3000. They spawned at gate number 1, putting them also very close to the What's in the Box icon, which ended up on treasure token number 2. The Wolf with No Name came in at teleporter number 5 completely alone, which I guess fits, and I think that covers it. Weird Wendell is not on the table for them. So it will be someone from the starter box going now. They can do up to 5 actions, although that would only leave 1 die spare for someone else on their side, and then their turn's already over. So they have to choose wisely. Oh, that's who I forgot. He's so little. The Wanderer ended up over there. He's in the danger zone. He's got 2 enemies right next to him, but he is also the closest to there. He doesn't get to go first though, so that's going to be a problem for him. But now we are ready to begin turn 1 and see how this game flows. So we're going to talk through the very first activation in steps again, just to kind of ease everyone into how watchable this game could be. Dez activated for the starter box team, that's the one with the huge rocket launcher. Because she started within 2 hexes of Eris, she had +1 speed, so her movement was actually 5. She spent 1 of the 6 action dice available to her team to move 5, ending up right up here, adjacent to the What's in the Box objective marker. It costs 1 to attempt a rig, and the classes listed on the card for if you're attempting a rig doesn't mean you do it for free. It means you get a power die in addition to what you would normally roll, which is 3 blue dice, the boost dice, and you're looking for, I believe you need to beat 3 which she got exactly. Let me just make sure it's equal to... let's see. When a hero rigs, roll 3 boost dice if the total number of strikes rolled is 3 or more. Yeah, so she does count as having rigged it, which means what's in the box has scored for the starter box team, so that's them already got 2 out of the 7 required for them to win. Her turn isn't over though, because she's now going to spend an action die to initiate felonious assault against the Wastelander down here by shooting that gigantic rocket launcher at him. So we're going to roll that out, and then her turn will probably be done after that. Well, that almost backfired in the most spectacular way possible, because the Wastelander is actually super good against ranged attacks. You roll a red die before the ranged attack is resolved, and as long as you don't roll a blank, of which there is only one, I think, on these red dice. Yep, there is only one. You deflect it back and the damage gets done against the attacker rather than him, because he's a ninja or a samurai with a katana that deflects, I guess. But he rolled a blank. That wasn't in the plan. Totally forgot he did that. So Des almost explodinated herself, but luckily bad luck is rampant. So the Wastelander did roll a blank, meaning that the roll goes against his defense. She got 3 strikes and 1 super strike for a total of 5. He is a 4/5 model, which means not only did she wound him, but she did super damage and did 2 out of his 3 health. Now, she doesn't really have any other options left of what to do now. That goes away. It was spent to initiate the attack. She has 3 of the action dice on her card now. She can have a total of 5, but she's moved, she's rigged, and she's attacked at range. There isn't really anything else she can do, so she now says turn over. It goes to the other side now, and they get to do whatever they want with their action dice, and it keeps going backwards and forwards like that across different heroes until both sides have used all their dice or have willingly chosen to pass. But we'll be opening up the next turn by drawing a new bounty card, because when a new turn starts, if there isn't 2 bounty cards in play, you draw one. The new bounty coming into play is Brain Snatcher. Setup: place a Cortex token on a random treasure beacon. At the end of each player's turn, if that player controls at least 2 heroes adjacent to the Cortex token and more heroes adjacent than any other opponent, claim the bounty. It is worth 1. We'll do the random roll on camera. Where's the d6s? They're over there. So it'll be spawning on treasure token number 2, which is the one that... I'm rolling a lot of 2s on that d6. Okay, it's going to be up there as well. So that new card spawning up there kind of threw a spanner in the works, but the other side, the Misfits, they activated the Wolf with No Name, who spent 1 action die to move. He has speed 4. He moved adjacent to the chest that had spawned there. Then he spent a 2nd action die to raid. You just succeed if there's no other rules or anything stopping you. So he does open it, and at which point you roll a boost die and see what it gives you. Because he didn't roll a blank, he gets the second best reward rather, which is gain 3 loot tokens, and you can return a Riot Gear card you've discarded this game to your hand. The second part doesn't matter at this point, but that does give him 3 loot tokens, which he might be able to spend. You can spend at any point to equip Riot Gear to a character. Only 1 bit of Riot Gear can ever be equipped to a character, and if you ever pick the same character again, the old one is destroyed. But 3 is enough that he has some options, and he's probably then just going to shoot someone. Well, the Wolf with No Name scored a disastrous result there as he attempted to snipe Sir Dreyfus there. Wouldn't even have mattered if he went after Gubbin. He managed to roll pretty terribly on the 1 action die spent to do the attack. He gets 1 blue, 2 red, and only got 2 successes. He would have needed 5 to hit Gubbin, or 3 to hit Sir Dreyfus. He's hard to crit, but he's easy to hit. So, independent of that though, the 3 loot he gained from raiding that chest, since it is still his turn, he is spending it on upgrading someone else in his team, or rather someone else in his team is spending it. You can do that as far as I'm aware. So the Skriz Zapper is getting equipped to Bumbles the Bear, which means that he gains a +1 power die on his melee attacks, and the beatback ability, which might be relevant to scoring that Brain Snatcher bounty card. So this point turn is passed back to the starter box team. There's 2 bounties in play. Don't need to do anything there, but there is no treasure card in play, so a new one has been picked. Haven't looked at it yet. Here it comes. It is the King's Chest. Rogues can raid this chest without spending an action die. So it's just a bog standard chest with potential riches. Actually, the base result on that is 4 loot. That's a lot of loot. Where is it spawning? Don't roll a 2. It's a 6. Where is treasure token 6? Oh, it's right there. So look at the icon for that. The King's Chest is going to be there as the starter box team goes with their 3 remaining action dice. Well, Iris activated for the starter box, spending 1 action die to move. She can move up to 5. She moved adjacent to the Cortex Bomb and adjacent to the Wastelander, then spent a 2nd action die to use her gun blades, which is actually a melee attack. She has a ranged attack, but that's the name of her close range attack. Just 2 boost dice on top of the 1 action die spent, and she managed to roll 3 blanks, meaning a big whiff and no damage dealt. That would have been a perfect turn almost if she'd taken out the Wastelander, because she would have got a scrap card worth 1 victory point for killing him, and then at the end of the round would have met the criteria to score Brain Snatcher. Such as it is though, there's still 1 unspent action die. They're not using it, so their turn is currently ending. We roll over to the other side now. There's a treasure card in play. There's 2 bounties, so nothing new needs to get drawn. It does mean play will come back to them one more time to spend that 1 extra die they still have. There probably won't be much they can do with it, but they will still have 1 more activation this turn. So the Misfits activated Bumbles the Bear, who, if you try and attack him, makes you feel bad. He has a rule called enemies can't spend more than 1 action die, because you can actually spend more than 1 action die to do an attack, which with hindsight Iris probably should have done. Forgot to mention, enemies adjacent to Iris are also -1 defense. Didn't make a difference if you roll nothing but blanks, of course, but hey, it's a thing that she does. Anyway, Bumbles the Bear activated. He moves 4. He moved adjacent to Iris, spent another action die to initiate Felonious Assault with his bare hands, which is just 4 of the boost dice. But he had 1 power die thrown in because of that Skriz Zapper upgrade from the Riot Gear card given to him. So that is what cinched it, because you need to get at least 4 to hit Iris, 5 to crit her. So he didn't crit her, but did manage to do 1 damage, and the Skriz Zapper also lets him knock her back up to 2. Now she only went back 1 because there's no other part of the arena up there, but that does mean she's not adjacent to the Brain Snatcher. So there's a chance that the Misfit team can actually use their final die to make it happen, because there's, even though the other side will go and they still have 1 die left, Iris has already done a move action in this turn, so they can't make her do that. So she isn't moving for the rest of this turn for sure. So they might have cinched that one. So with their final action die, the starter box side activated Gubbin. He moves 5, and he did so to get all the way up here adjacent to the King's Chest. Now that's their last die gone, their turn is basically done. However, the King's Chest can be raided by rogues for free, and rogues are green class characters, of which Gubbins is, so he raids it for free. Unfortunately he rolled a blank on his roll though, which just means he gets 4 loot tokens. That's actually still really good, but not the best possible result. So that's probably going to get spent before turn gets handed back over for the final action die for the other side, but we'll cover that then. So as we begin the final action of the first turn, that 4 loot gained by opening the King's Chest is being spent to give the projectile scope Riot Gear, which is worth all 4 to Des, which means she's getting +1 power die on her ranged attack, so it's 2 red, 3 blue and a white minimum that she's rolling for that now. And it also means she counts as the scout class in addition to her own class, which is whatever the orange one is, and gives you the spotter, so enemies within 2 spaces are -1 defense, so that makes her really, really scary and powerful. But there's also no treasure chest in play as a new turn starts, so there's a new treasure spawning. It is a buried chest which scouts, oh isn't that convenient, she just became one. Scouts can open without spending an action die, but beyond that is just where does the icon appear. This icon should be gone also. It's going to 2. I presume it can go to 2 even though the Cortex Brain Snatcher thing is there. So both markers are going to be on that square then. The final action die for the Misfits, it was spent on Destructron 3000, simply moving adjacent to Bumbles to help him score the Brain Snatcher card. However, did make a mistake. Thought the check condition for scoring Brain Snatcher was at the end of the entire turn. It's actually at the end of each player's turn, which means the box set team should have won it earlier, but because we've done activations since then with the mind that it scores at the end of the round, that's how we're going to do it this time, but that is incorrect. It should have scored already. You check the conditions at the end of a player's turn, not the full turn. But for now, we're just doing it at the end of the round, which is now. In the future, it'll be done correctly. So this is going to score for the Misfits for 1, but yeah, it should have scored for the other side earlier on. But that scores, and that takes us to the end of the first turn. So after all players have passed, usually because they're completely out of action dice, you enter what's called the cooldown phase. After all players have passed, the final phase of the round begins. Remove all action dice from your heroes and then put them back in the dice well. Starting with the last player to have priority and continuing clockwise, each player can return one of their heroes in play to the bench. They are classed as evacuated, but they have to be undamaged and they have to be adjacent to the center hex of the arena map, which is the one that says Riot Quest, obviously, right there. So that ain't happening this time. Beyond that though, after the evacuation step is complete, roll to determine which of your heroes in the cooler are returned to the bench. No one is in the cooler. You just roll a white die, and as long as there's, well, you roll a white die for each person in the cooler, and the number of hits you roll is the number of players that go back onto your bench. After that's done, return all action dice to your dice well, and start a new turn. So with that, we're going to roll off and go into turn 2. At the top of turn 2, it's the Misfits who won priority, but before anything else, there's only one bounty card in play now. So a new one is going in play, and it's called Wreck Face Goal. Let me bring this closer so you can read it as well. Apologies. You do have to look at Comic Sans. I double apologise for that. If a hero raids a treasure chest and causes super damage to an enemy during the same turn, super damage is beating the second defense number. That player control the hero controlling player bounty, etc. My reading comprehension there just fell apart at the last second because it feels so unnecessary to point out that it's the hero's controlling player. It should really just say the player that did the thing, but you know, whatever. Claims the bounty, and it's another one worth 2, but getting a chest and dealing super damage in the same turn, I guess as long as you hang around treasure spot number 2, it's fine, because that's where everything is spawning. But, oh, we've lost focus. I'll fix that, and we'll be back with whoever they're activating. Oh boy, turn 2 is starting off with a bang, almost literally. Destructron 3000 activated. One action die was immediately spent to raid the treasure chest that was right there. That is the result of the roll there, which means, if we bring this up here, hopefully in focus, there we go, gain 3 loot tokens, then either gain 2 additional loot tokens or remove all damage tokens from a model in your crew. The Wastelander is healing to full, but you still get the 3 loot tokens. So that 2 damage on the Wastelander, that goes away. I decided to put it on the table, by the way, just to keep track of who's damaged at a glance. And the 3 loot tokens that look like they belong in one piece are in their, there you go, in their side of a table. So then, he spent 2 action dice. You need to spend a minimum of 1 to do an attack, but you can spend more. He spent 2 to use his Electro Pummeler. Now, if he's adjacent to someone, he actually gets +2 red dice, but you can't walk over treasure hexes or through characters, so he couldn't get to Iris. So he just took the risk of shooting her from there. He gets a reroll on a power die, the red die in other words, as well, and he was looking not just to beat her defense, but to beat the second defense number so he could get that super damage through. And would you believe it? He rolled fantastically and actually did it. So a few different things happen there. He does 2 damage, which on top of the 1 damage she already had means that Iris is in the cooler because she is dead. She leaves behind loot, which goes there. She gives up a scrap card, which is just basically like a bounty card except it's red and it still says it's worth 1 victory point in the corner. And Wreck Face scores, I believe, because he did the thing. The hero raids a treasure chest and causes super... Yeah, he did it. So that's 2 points more there, meaning they're all of a sudden in the lead with 4. Now, he's spent 3 of their dice, so that's half of them gone already of the action die, but boy was that worth it. So we've got a bunch of stuff to do now. The first actions for the starter box in turn 2. New bounty card, first of all, let's do that. Just for fun, I want to know what the scoring is. It's Get Lucky. If a hero rolls 2 or more super strikes, that's the double icons. Destructron just got 3 of them. During any roll in their activation, you control, you score the bounty for 1. The treasure chest is an iron chest. Fighters, there's no fighters on the table, so everyone's going to have to spend to open this one. Fair enough. D6s, I keep putting the D6 out of my range. The iron chest, it rolled off the camera, but it is spawning at number 5, which is right there. The iron chest is this one. The iron chest is right there. The last thing to do is, because they currently don't have at least 4 fighters on the table. If they have someone who isn't on the cooler, they come on. So Bamfist is coming on at teleporter number 1, which is right up here. So he's now going to be threatening. Oh, there he is, right up there. Out of focus, but I assure you Bamfist is there. Well, in an effort to do some damage, it wasn't Bamfist activated, it was Dez, and only 1 action die is being spent on her entire turn. She just engaged in felonious assault from where she was with that supercharged bazooka of hers, now with a projectile scope, meaning she was getting an extra power die on it, and she was looking to try and crack through Destructotron 3000's armour. He's easy to wound, you only need 3 or better, but to do super damage you need 8. So he's really, really difficult to do super damage to. He only has 3 health, but really hard to get down without attacking him 3 separate times. So she shot a superpower projectile scope bazooka shot at him. Didn't even get 2 super hits either, but did manage to do enough. They took 1 damage, so it's a start. Oh, as an addendum, because Bumbles the Bear is next to him, his defense is actually +1 better because he gives cover to adjacent friendlies, just like Sir Dreyfus does. So Destructotron is actually 4/9 currently with his defense. So still wounded though. She's still rolled enough to hurt him, but there was no chance she was critting him there. The Wastelander activated for the Misfits next, spending 1 action die to move 5 down to the far side of the current chest in play, the Iron Chest. Spent another one to raid it, to open it up, and managed to roll a hit icon, which means he gets 4 loot tokens and can immediately remove all damage tokens from a model in your crew, which there's no one. Well, I guess the Destructotron damage is gone now. So that's gone, and that means a new treasure chest will be spawning. He isn't doing anything else, so they've still got 1 action die left over. Well, a new treasure token has to go in play as we swap back to the starter box, but 3 loot are first of all being spent on Polarity Disorganizer, and that is being given to Destructotron 3000. It means he's permanently in cover, which means he is permanently, unless it's an attack that ignores cover in some fashion, 4/9 defense. So that's pretty bad, although there is ways to destroy gear as well. Tinkers do that, which is Bamfist. But the chest that is appearing, just flipped it, is another hidden chest. There is only 6 chest types because there's 1 for each class, yeah. So expect to see some repeats here. So there is a hidden chest spawning again, which scouts like, the yellow class, on treasure number 6. Didn't it spawn on 6 last time? No, it didn't. Not well, 1 did, but not this time. So it's right next to Gubbins there. So Gubbins activated for the starter box, spending 1 action die immediately to raid the hidden chest and managed to get a super strike, which means 4 loot tokens, and you can immediately spawn a model in your crew in play adjacent to a spawn gate that isn't considered spawning. It doesn't say you can do that to people in the cooler, so we're going to presume that that's not allowed, but the 4 loot tokens will probably be spent in a second. He then spent 2 action dice in order to do some more explosives, too many explosives, with the 4 blue dice into the wolf with no name, and got him real good. Got him for super damage, 2 of his 4 health gone, and more importantly, met the criteria for get lucky. I mean, you roll enough dice and sooner or later it's going to happen. So that scores for 1, taking them to 3. But that actually means they're still 1 behind. Well, to help Gubbins' little killing spree, 3 of that 4 loot they just gained is being spent to give him bang rounds, which would obviously make more sense to give them to Dez because it's clearly one of her rockets, but that's okay. He gains +1 power die in his range attacks and then also gets the beatback ability. It's basically very similar to the projectile scope, so he's even more threatening. Well, the Misfits only have 1 action die left to spend, but first a treasure card and a bounty card have to come into play. A puzzle chest, so specialists. Bamfist is on the table now, so there is a specialist. Can loot it for free. Where is the specialist chest spawning? It is spawning at 4, which is right next to the wolf with no name, so he's probably just going to spend that action die to remove it for loot, but I guess we'll see. Forgot to grab the top of the bounty deck, so there we go. Let's see what it is. Telepandemonium. Setup. Place a malfunctioning token on a random spawn gate. Well, let's see which spawn gate is malfunctioning. It's going to be spawn gate number 2. That's where everyone's spawning. It's up at the top right of the table. If a hero would spawn in the malfunctioning spawn gate, that hero spawns adjacent to a random treasure beacon instead. The hero adjacent to the malfunctioning spawn gate can rig to fix it. If successful, you claim this bounty. Specialists gain a bonus power die when attempting to do it. It's worth 2. That actually seems incredibly doable, although they can't do it this turn because they don't have enough action dice to get there and attempt it. So, spawn gate number 2 which is on this end of the table, up there. I'll find it which token is the malfunctioning token in a second. This is the malfunctioning one for the purposes of that bounty. So the Misfits spent their final action die just getting Bumbles to go next to the malfunctioning teleporter. No action dice left to do anything with it. He can't rig it for free because he's not the right type. But the final 3 loot they had unspent is actually being spent on him to give him invisible sneakers. So the bear is now semi-transparent. It gives him +1 speed, which puts him at speed 5. It means he has the sneak ability and counts as a rogue along with his normal class. Sadly, the rogue isn't the type that gets to rig for... well, you can't rig bounties for free anyway, it's just an extra die. But either way, that means he is a dual class now, which might help for other bounties or treasure chests. But that's their turn 2 done. The starter box still has 2 unspent dice, but they have to pick someone who hasn't activated yet. So it's going to be Dreyfus or Bamfist. Oh, and those last 2 dice were well spent by Sir Dreyfus, who ignored the chest. He spent 1 to walk adjacent to the wolf with no name, and spent the second to attack with his Storm Lance in an effort to do super damage, because super damage would kill him. He has 2 health left. And he went and did it. The wolf with no name is 3-5 defense. Sir Dreyfus actually lowers the defense of adjacent enemies, but only for allies who attack. He himself doesn't get the benefit, but it doesn't matter because he did enough. So the wolf with no name goes to the Gula. It also means both sides have 4 points now because 1 scrap card is gained and a loot token is left behind right there where a wolf with no name used to be. And anything else? Does that claim a bounty? They're not the same type, and it didn't solve the teleport problem, so no. So that's the end of round 2. Everything's still to play for, both sides on 4 of the 7 victory points needed to win. 2 bounties in play, treasure chest still in play, nothing to roll for. Action dice go back into the dice well, and we go into the start of turn 3 and we see if anyone comes back. So at the top of the 3rd turn, the starter box side have 1 priority. But unfortunately, they rolled a blank, meaning that Iris is staying in the cooler. I keep on wanting to say it like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Batman and Robin. Unfortunately for the other side, Wolf with no name, he ain't coming back either. But they have 1 undeployed hero that's just on the bench. They have Weird Wendell, and he is real weird. So he gets to come on. It's a little unclear whether or not it comes on now at the top of this turn, or if that only happens at the start of the game. And he'll come on at the first turn for them. Or now. We're just going to do it now because that seems more correct. And he's coming on at teleporter number 6, which is not the malfunctioning one. It's all the way over here, which is very far from the action. As my dog chokes on her own fluff. Yeah, hello, I'm talking about you interrupted me. Anyway, into the 3rd turn with the starter box going first. So Des got the turn started spending 1 action die to move adjacent to the malfunctioning teleporter. However, did notice she actually has a passive called High Density Armor. It makes her immune to being moved by enemy effects or abilities, so she shouldn't have been knocked away from the teleporter earlier in the game, so that was done doubly wrong. They really should have scored it earlier in the game, which matters because she successfully rigged the broken teleporter, getting exactly 3 on the dice required, meaning that Tilla Pandemonium scores for this side for 2. So if they had scored the whatever the bounty was called earlier for having 2 near the token there, the brain token thing, they would actually now be at enough to win. We did do that wrong, so we're playing on because that's just what's happening. But they are only 1 away from winning now, and her turn isn't over yet because she's going to try and kill... Well, she can't kill him, but she's going to try and wound Destructotron with all the dice she rolls, see if she can get through that 4-9 defense. Well, it was asking a bit much, but she did manage to do enough that she dealt damage to him, so that is 1 of his 3 health gone. If he'd kept that damage on him from earlier, if she'd done super damage to him and killed him, well, I guess the 1 point for killing him would have been enough to win anyway, but that also would have scored friggin' imposters because they're the same class. But such as it is, nope, and with that, it's over to the other side. And a new bounty card comes into play with that. Wasteland Mugging. A hero adjacent to an enemy can rig to rob the enemy. If successful, that player's controlling player gains 2 loot tokens and claims this bounty. And the enemy's controlling player loses 2 loot tokens to a minimum of 0. It's only worth 1, but seems relatively easy to do. So Destructron 3000 activated, and I realise why I keep on struggling with his name. It's because I want to say Destructor, which is the giant wrestling robot from Futurama. Anyway, Destructron spent an action die to move adjacent to Des, and then spent a second one to attempt to mug her, and succeeded. Presumably you just need the 3 or more. So that scores a Wasteland mugging. It also steals the only 2 loot they had left. For 1 victory point, taking them to 5 of the 7 required. So they're still 1 behind. But he's not done yet. He is going to spend at least 1 other action die to fire his electro pummelers point blank, which means he's rolling a lot of red dice. And thanks to rolling so many red dice, he fairly comfortably managed to get the minimum required to hit Des, which is 3. But he did actually manage to just get enough for super damage. She's a 3/6, and he got 6, 2, 4, yeah, he got 6 on the dot. So that is 2 damage instead of 1 to her 3 health. So she's only got 1 left. They still have 3 action dice, but they're handing it over for now. So it's over to them, but Des is already activated, so she's not going to be able to get away. First things first, a new bounty. Look, a death trap. Place a trap token in the centre of the arena map, so that's adjacent to the Wastelander right there. If a hero is ever in the same space as the trap token, that hero is immediately knocked out. At the end of each player's turn, that player can move the trap token 1 space. A hero adjacent to a trap token can rig it to disarm it. If successful, that hero's controlling player claims this bounty. Fighters and scouts get a bonus to that. It's worth 2. That's enough to get them the win. But the only person they have close enough... Oh no, Dreyfus could get there as well. Dreyfus or Gubbin could get over to the token. I presume the trap token is the one that looks like a trap. I see it from here. So we'll just use that one. There is a trap in the middle of the arena right there. They can go for the win, or they can move it at the end of a turn onto the Wastelander and kill him, which would also give them the 1 to win, actually. I think there's no way to stop them, right? They have to move it at the end of the turn. Let's see. At the end of each player's turn, that player can move. Yeah, so there's no way to stop the starter box from winning, because even if they do literally nothing, as long as they spend an action die and don't pass, they can just say the trap moves on to the Wastelander. Oh, actually, that's the trap killing him, though. Do they claim the bounty in that regard? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I need to check that. But if they're able to disarm it, won't need to check anything anyway, because they'd get 2 and they only need 1 to win. Well, there we go. 1 action die spent to move next to it, 1 to rig it, and Gubbin did it. He got 4 of the 3 required, meaning that look, a death trap has scored for 2, which actually gives them 8 of the 7 required to win. So the starter box wins at that point. Couldn't really see that it wouldn't score for them if the trap killed the Wastelander, so they would have won in that way as well. If it had been able to roll back round to another activation for the Misfits side, Bumbles would have spent 1 action die to move adjacent to Des here, then spent 2 action dice, because they had 2 left after that, along with his 4 blue dice, plus 1 red die, to assault Des, and if he'd killed her, that would have given them... Oh, actually no, it would have to be Destructron that kills her to get the 2. That would only give 1, which actually would not be enough, so never mind. Yep, the starter box had this. So that is going to do it for the first showing of Riot Quest on the channel, a game that kind of died off during the pandemic because it just picked the worst possible time to launch. I found that very fun. It was very quick, very fast and furious, with the constant feeding of new treasure chests and bounties and offering you ways to equip better gear or just go for easy cheap points. I hope I explained it and helped show the flow of the game as best as I could, keeping in mind it is the first time it's been played. So hopefully that was easy to follow, and now if you've made it to the end of the video, it is time to take to the comments and decide whether you are for or against seeing Riot Quest as a more common feature on the channel. I feel like this one's probably going to be pretty divisive, rather much like Transformers deck building game was, but who knows, I'm not sure. I guess we'll see. There's a lot more heroes available for the game. I've got a few to paint up that would increase the variety. We'll need to think of better names for the teams. We need some mascots actually, so we could have like blue and red would be boring, but like blue team on the left, red team on the right, that'd be quite fun. If I could find something to be a mascot for each side, that'd be a nice way because at a glance, unless you've been following the team setups, I can see it as being a little bit difficult to remember which hero is on which side because there's no colour coordination. You could get some base toppers, I suppose, but I did have a look and I could only find plastic ones. In my experience, plastic ones just tear up the bases, so I don't like them. I prefer like the rubber ones. Couldn't find any that would fit such different sizes of bases. But either way, let me know what you think of Riot Quest, and maybe we'll see it a lot in the future. Maybe we'll see it once in a blue moon, or maybe we won't see it ever again, other than outside painting videos. Thank you for giving it a chance though if you did. I appreciate it. If you want to support what we do here on the channel, please do consider becoming a channel member or checking out the channel sponsor, who I know for a fact has a bunch of Riot Quest stuff, because that's where I got most of it. So they definitely have it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you next time. Ta-ta for now.